My name's Saxxon Anderson, and I grew up in Glendale, Arizona, or technically all around Arizona. Um, but I'm really into horror movies, and been into horror movies since I was, I don't know, 8 years old. Started watching. I think snuck a peek at a horror film that my father was watching. I think it was Nightmare on Elm Street, actually, and that's kind of what got me into watching horror films and really enjoying them. Horror is a particularly interesting genre in the fact that although most people would think that you'd be terrified and that you'd want to avoid it, I find that horror's actually got a lot more depth than that. It has a lot of qualities that people don't really look at. I've come to the conclusion that a lot of horror is generally seen in a negative light, especially by comparison to other genres. But at the end of the day, horror can offer many different emotions that people don't really recognize beyond fear and being scared. I mean, there's comedy, there's generally it talks about teen lust, and it talks about, there's the ups and downs. And by the end of the story, although it's been a terrifying ride throughout the entire process, the ending character, the final girl, if you will, ends up leading to a sense of optimism that if a person truly strives and is determined to stay alive, that no matter what circumstance they may find themselves in and no matter what horrors they may face, eventually they will come out on top. And that's always just been really inspiring to me. And it's not specific to any one type of horror, because you have paranormal films, you have slasher films, you have any number of different forms within the genre that look at different aspects of what is fear and what do we want to make to portray certain things that people may fear, and how do we want to use other emotions to kind of blend with that and make something different. Eventually, my goal is to, in fact, make horror films and try and find my own little piece of horror movie history and find a different way of telling a story that can terrify people, but at the same time can give a sense of at least appreciation, and also add, general entertainment that you find in movies like Friday the 13th, which, although gore is a huge factor in the modern day, I look back at movies like Halloween, and I don't think that gore is necessarily the biggest factor to what makes horror horror. So if there's any advice that I'd give to someone that's, looking at horror films or even just doesn't like horror films, I would say that it may be better to not just watch one or two and just kind of call it quits. I think there's so many different areas within horror that should be evaluated if someone really wants to make a judgment. I mean, I recognize that horror is not for everyone, but in the end, I think that there's something within every horror movie for somebody.